Monopoly. Monopoly is when there is only one supplier of a good or service, giving them total control over the market. In this situation, the firm is the industry. However, it may only hold control over the price or amount supplied, never both. Characteristics of monopoly. 1. The firm is the industry. There is no distinction between the two. The firm supplies the entire output of said industry. 2. Control. The firm can either control the price or the output. The output is decided by consumers. The price is determined by the market. 3. Profit maximization. It is possible for firms to earn supernormal profits both in the short run and the long run. The firms aim to maximize their profits. 4. Barriers to entry. There is no freedom of entry into the market as it would threaten the existence of the monopoly. Barriers are put in place to block entry of new firms and protect the monopolist. For example, a patent is an effective means of consolidating the monopolist as they have the sole right to the manufacturing process. Another barrier to entry is government regulation, for example in the case of Dublin Bus. And thirdly, trade agreements or collusion. 4. Ownership of raw material. If a firm acquires the sole rights to raw materials, it is a monopoly. For example, De Beers Diamonds controlled 80% of the diamond mines in South Africa. High startup costs are another barrier to entry, as they may prevent smaller firms entering the market. Only the wealthiest can survive. 6. Mergers, buying out smaller firms so there's no competition for the monopolist. Another barrier to entry is limit pricing. This is the practice of selling at very low prices to starve new entrants out of the industry, and so the monopoly prevails. Finally, brand proliferation. Extensive and persuasive branding leading consumers to believe there is no substitute good, for example Coca-Cola. There are both advantages and disadvantages to monopolies. Here are some of the advantages. There's a guaranteed supply of the product or service, such as in a state monopoly. Employment, there's no competition, so you've got greater job security. There's also potential for research and development or innovation. Profits could be used for investment in research and development to secure dominance of the market. Some negatives of monopolies are the exploitation of consumers, so the monopolists may abuse their power by pushing up prices. There's also the possibility of the production of fewer goods at a higher price than at perfect competition, and firms may become less efficient or innovative as they hold the dominant position, which means that they do not have to compete in the marketplace.
The monopolistic graph stays the same in the short run and the long run. The firm earns supernormal profits where average revenue is greater than average cost, as seen on the graph represented by the shaded area. They earn these profits because they have the ability to price discriminate. They are the sole supplier of the good or service, and hence they can decide on what price they wish to charge for it. They also earn supernormal profits because their profits are not split with any other firms in the industry because they are the only firm in the industry. Equilibrium can be seen where marginal cost equals marginal revenue at point E on the graph. The price charged for the output is seen at P1 and the quantity of output produced is seen at Q1.
Monopolistic competition is a market structure in which many firms sell products that are similar but not identical. Now, let's see the different characteristics of the monopolistic competition. First of all, there are many sellers in the industry. They are all competing for the same group of consumers. Then, product differentiation exists. All the goods are not homogeneous. They are close substitutes and slightly different. A consequence is that sellers are price makers rather than price takers. That is to say that they choose their own price. To differentiate themselves and to persuade the consumer about the superiority of their products, sellers fall back on advertising. We can note 4 kinds of product differentiation. Physical product differentiation, where firms use the appearance of their products to differentiate themselves. For example, the design of electronic devices, such as phones or computers. Then, the marketing differentiation, which encompasses marketing techniques, such as packing, for example. Then, human capital differentiation, thanks to which firms differentiate themselves by the quality and the skill of their employees. This can lead to the brand loyalty, which allows consumers to know the quality of the good they are buying. And finally, the 4th type of differentiation is through distribution. That is to say that companies can be distinguished by their zones of distribution, as a company like Amazon, which sells worldwide, and a bookstore which is more local. Free entry is also one of the main characteristics. In the monopolistic competition, firms can enter or exit the market as they wish, without any restriction. Finally, each firm attempts to maximize their profit. Thus, they will choose the quantity at which the marginal revenue equals the marginal cost. Let's see that in a graphic in the short term. In an imperfect competition, each firm faces a downward sloping demand curve. As when the price increases, the demand will decrease, because, like we said before, in a monopolistic competition, the products are close substitutes. Let's draw the marginal cost and the marginal revenue curves, and the ATC, which represent the average total cost. As we said before, each firm attempts to maximize their profit. They will choose the quantity at which the marginal revenue equals the marginal cost, which is represented where the curve intersects. This is where equilibrium occurs. So this represents the profit maximizing quantity. For this quantity, we can find the price and the average cost. In this case, the price is superior than the ATC. So we can say that the firm is making profit. The profit is represented by the shaded area. But in the long run, because firms are making profit, it will encourage entry of new firms to enter the market. This goes to shift the demand curve to the left. The firms will make less profit, so they will have an incentive to exit the market. So in the long run, this process of entry and exit will remain until the firms are making zero profit. If we translate that into a graph, the quantity that maximizes their profit still corresponds to the quantity at which the margin revenue equals the margin cost, which is represented by the intersection of the two curves. The equilibrium occurs at this point. In the long term, the demand curve and the ATC curve are tangential, which means that the price equals the ATC. Firms are not making profit anymore. The market reaches equilibrium, so the firms have no incentives to exit or enter the market.
Now we will talk about oligopoly. An oligopolistic market can be characterized in the following ways. Generally, there is only a handful of sellers in the industry. Therefore, there is a large number of customers and only a small number of sellers or firms. There is interdependence between firms. This means firms do not act independently of one another, but instead take into account the likely reactions of their competitors when making an economic decision. In oligopoly, firms often sell very similar products that could be close substitutes for one another. Therefore, product differentiation occurs. An example of product differentiation is competitive advertising. In oligopoly, collusion may occur. This means firms within the industry may meet and plan on controlling the output or prices of the industry. I will now discuss the concept of Nash equilibrium. Nash equilibrium occurs when interdependent firms aim to maximize their economic potential, and more importantly, they do so while thinking about what other tactics or strategies other firms may be using to maximize their economic potential. Game theory refers to the analysis of one's tactical behavior. An example of one such strategic game is Prisoner's Dilemma. In this game of Prisoner's Dilemma, Bob and Bill are accused of breaking the law. The length of their impending sentence will be influenced by whether or not they admit their actions. They must decide on their own personal best strategy, or in other words, their dominant strategy. In our example, Bob's dominant strategy will clearly be to confess, as his sentence will be shorter if he does so, regardless of Bill's decision to admit his crime or hold his peace.